So according to multiple sources, Whoopi Goldberg is livid over her recent suspension for saying that the Holocaust was not about race. Welcome back to the Kempire Daily YouTube channel, where you get daily and consistent hot topics in music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So yesterday, you may have seen a short that I did where I reported that Whoopi Goldberg had been suspended for 2 weeks by ABC News president. Well, now, according to multiple sources, Whoopi Goldberg behind the scenes is livid and is threatening to quit. Look, I'm not shocked by this, and I'm not surprised that Whoopi Goldberg is upset. So many of you have been upset about the suspension. There have been some of you that say she should be fired, but there are a lot of you saying that this is too much. She didn't mean malice with what she said. Was it ignorant? Definitely. But a lot of you also didn't understand what race had to do with anything. So before we even get into what sources are saying about Whoopi Goldberg, I found Dr. C on TikTok who explains why exactly what Whoopi Goldberg said is incorrect, especially when it comes to race. So many of you are saying, well, being Jewish is not race. Well, Dr. C explains it better. So take a look at what he had to say.
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg's recent remarks about the Holocaust, where she said that the Holocaust was not about race. It was about Germans oppressing Jews, and both were groups of white people, so it couldn't be a matter of racism. And I understand how this might make sense from a very narrow American perspective, but this is inaccurate for a variety of reasons. The first thing to acknowledge is that there were roughly 12 million victims in the Holocaust. About 6 million of those were Jews. The other 6 million were a combination of the Romani, the disabled, political dissidents, the LGBTQ community, as well as anyone else that was deemed socially unacceptable. But that aside, let's talk about the racial aspect of it. The concept of race has existed in human history for several hundred years by this point, but the categories of race have shifted and changed over time, usually based on who was doing the defining. Essentially, each category was a product of its time and cultural context. Modern science understands that race is not biologically real, but in the 18th century, scientists were trying to develop distinct racial categories, and depending on who you asked and when you asked, you would get a variety of different answers. Some argued that there were 3 distinct groups, the Mongolians, Caucasians, and Negroids. Others expanded it out to include 2 others, like the Malays of Southeast Asia, or the Americans, who were the indigenous native population of the Americas. Others said that the Sami of Northern Europe were their own distinct racial category. And some argued that darker skin was actually the result of a genetic skin disease. So fast forward to the 1930s, and we see that it is explicitly clear in Nazi racial ideology, which they were very open about, that Jews, in their view, are a distinct race that is inferior and that threatens the purity and superiority of Aryan blood. So in this regard, the targeting of Jews by the Nazis during the Holocaust was absolutely a matter of racism, because race is always defined and reshaped based off of the time and cultural context, and that's how the Nazis chose to define race in that environment. It's also important to note that the Nazis were aware of the whiteness of the European Jews that they were persecuting, and they claimed that this made them even more dangerous because this meant that they could pass or infiltrate into German circles of polite society and thus became even more of a threat to the racial purity that they were espousing. It's also important to remember that not all Jews are white. Many of them are people of color, and they have to deal with the modern day iterations of racism. So what do we take away from all this? Well, number 1, race is a social construct. It is not biologically real. It is always shaped by the society, the culture, and the era in which it occurs. Number 2, whiteness is negotiable. It has been bestowed upon groups and taken away from groups to manipulate them whenever the dominant society decides it is appropriate. And number 3, it is generally speaking not helpful or productive to look at historical social phenomenon through a modern lens of understanding. We have to look at the time and what they thought and understood in order to get the most out of it.
That has been the best explanation in regards to what everyone has been going back and forth on. However, it should be noted that Whoopi Goldberg did apologize. She apologized on her social media, and then she went on The View and apologized again. But there's been such backlash over this, ABC News put her on a suspension. Here's my issue with the suspension. It was performative. I don't think that they really were suspending her because they felt that was what was necessary. I think they're suspending her because they think people will forget after 2 weeks. They think that people will be like, oh, ABC did something. That's what the suspension is about. Well, now according to a report, Whoopi is upset. She's livid and is threatening not to return to The View. Some of you are happy about that. But that's neither here nor there. So this is what they're saying according to the New York Post. They're saying that Whoopi Goldberg allegedly feels humiliated. They said she feels ABC executives mishandled this. She followed their playbook. She went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and then apologized on The View the next day. The source added that while Goldberg is taking the suspension hard and says she wants to leave the show, insiders believe she's likely just sounding off. Her ego has been hurt and she's telling people she's going to quit, according to the source. Suspension from The View is like getting suspended from Bravo. The bar is very low. That feels like a read. So some of Whoopi Goldberg's co-hosts are speaking out, including Anna Navarro, who says this: I love Whoopi Goldberg. I love The View. This is what she told the Daily Beast on Tuesday. This was an incredibly unfortunate incident. Whoopi is a lifelong ally to the Jewish community. She is not an anti-Semite, period. I am sad and I have nothing else to say. And I think that's why there's so much uproar about this. There's uproar about what she said, the ignorance of what she said, but there's also uproar about people saying her intention was not to be malicious here. That's the difference when we talk about people being anti-Semitic. I think, especially listening to someone like Dr. C, people are learning something about what race is, how that is a social construct. And I think very much like Whoopi Goldberg, there were a lot of people that did not understand that. As always, guys, I want to know your thoughts on this. As you always do, let's continue the conversation in the comment section. And as always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.